Let it go, make my body go, make our bodies higher and higher.
Excel has any number of different protection schemes, and when you work with Excel, sometimes it's just a simple question of hiding data, and that's good enough. We're looking at a worksheet called Worksheet Protection. It's in the workbook 11-Security and Sharing. Let's imagine you're an HR manager, and this is a list of all the employees, and you've got a couple of assistants, and from time to time, some changes need to be made. Maybe you're looking at a sheet of paper and you're making some marks on it. This needs to be changed, that does, whatever. Now, the people who work for you don't necessarily know Excel that well. They might not need to know it too well. And you're concerned about some changes to this file. There's a formula in column E that calculates years based on the hire date. You may or may not have seen how to use a function called dateDiff. It's not too critical. But on your sheet of paper, this hire date needs to be changed to 03. Now, someone looking at this might say, well, okay, then that means that this should be an 11. You can imagine a naive user saying, okay, I'm going to change that to an 03. I have to change this to an 11. I'll just type in the 11 first. What will that do? That'll wipe out the formula. Now, you want to have this information visible, but you don't want anybody changing this. So one thought might be, there should be a way, and there is, to say, you cannot change this. Another thought, job ratings are pretty sensitive, and not everybody should be able to see them. Maybe you don't want these to be seen. We could hide the column, and that might be good enough. Would the other person doing the updating here know about how to unhide? Well, maybe, and probably that person isn't malicious and probably wouldn't be doing that, but on the other hand, you're concerned about that a little bit. So we could hide column H. Salaries maybe are sensitive too, and we need to see them for reference purposes here, but we want to make sure that whoever is working with this is not changing these. So I've got some different thoughts here, and you can probably imagine other little scenarios about how you want data to be seen and not seen. Now, in every Excel worksheet, unless you've made changes, every cell has the attribute of being locked. If you right-click on a cell and go to Format Cells, or if you press Control-1, either way, go to the Protection tab, probably the cell is locked, unless you've made changes to it. Now, here's what we'd like to do. We'd like to set things up in this worksheet so that whoever's using it, at least for a time, is allowed to make changes pretty much everywhere, except no changes in column E, no changes in column G, and we don't want column H even to be visible. We want to be able to hide it and prevent the other person or other people from unhiding it. So let's begin with the process of unlocking all cells. Click in the upper left corner. Again, press Control-1 or right-click Format Cells. Now, notice the description here. Locked means, as it says here, it has no effect until you protect the worksheet. That's what we're on the path to doing. So it doesn't mean anything yet, but we're going to unlock everything at first. All cells are unlocked. If we somehow turn on protection, it wouldn't mean a whole lot. But we're now going to lock column G. We don't want anybody changing anything here. And also column E. Now, we do want to allow changes in column D, and that will cause changes to these formulas. In other words, the formulas will react to the changes here. But we want to make sure that nobody types over our formulas here. So column E and column G, we don't want to be changed. So we'll select these in either order with the Control key, and we're going to lock these. Once again, Control-1 or right-click, Format Cells. We want these to be locked. Click OK. We don't want column H visible at all. Right-click and hide. Now, we can protect a worksheet. You can also protect a workbook. Two different tasks, two different capabilities. For the moment, we're only concerned with this sheet right here, Worksheet Protection. We go to the Review tab in the ribbon and choose Protect Sheet. Prevent unwanted changes from others by limiting their ability to edit. Now, we're going to provide a password, but we've got tons of options down here that we might allow the other person to use. Inserting columns, formatting columns, that sort of thing. For the moment, let's leave most of them unlocked. Now, at a minimum, we must allow the other people who are going to be using this to select unlocked cells. That has to be checked. We might or might not allow them to select locked cells. If we uncheck this, they won't even be able to click, for example, on column E, any cell there. For the moment, let's leave it that way. Let's provide a password, PW, I use that all the time. Of course, you want to remember it. It's going to prompt for us again. And of course, in real life, you'll use whatever password you want. And need I say, don't forget. So we're now in that mode. By the way, a visual giveaway, if worksheet is protected, go to the Home tab, and most of the features are grayed out. Some other features are going to be grayed out too on other tabs. In fact, that's the way it looks in general. Now, imagine I'm the other user here. I'm about to adjust this to put in 2003, and while I'm at it, I'll just go over here and make this be 11. But I can't click here. Can I tab there? Nope, I can't even click there. Lisa's my friend. It'd be nice if I could make her salary be $75,000. Can I click there? Nope. And even if I could, I couldn't change it, but I can't even click there. And it looks like there's a hidden column here between G and H. What's over there? Highlight this. Right click. I can't even right click. I can't select them both. Can I somehow click in here, right click? Nothing about unhide. Could I click in the upper left corner here, maybe? And select the whole worksheet? Can't even do that. So, in all three instances here, I can't change this either by mistake or maliciously, or this, and I can't get to that hidden column. Now, to unprotect this, we go to the Review tab and choose Unprotect. And of course, if there's a password, we've got to know it. I do know it, and unprotect it. Now we can make changes, but you'd have to, of course, know that password. Now, I'm going to start this again, this time make a slight change, and this time allow all users to select the locked cells. Provide that password again, enter, provide it again, and enter. Same kind of scenario as before, but this time I can click here. But as I start to type, can't type anything. The cell you're trying to change is on a protected sheet. Unprotect the sheet. Can't do that then. This is my friend Lisa. I'm going to change her salary to be 75. Whoops, can't do that. Anything I type gets stopped immediately. How about that hidden column? Can we drag across here? Right click. Unhide isn't selectable. How about clicking the upper left corner? Right click along here. Can't get to unhide. So here too we've prevented all those. Slightly different in this case, we've allowed users to click these cells, but we're not allowing them to make any changes. This is not the entire set of security features in Excel, but it does point out that on a worksheet basis, you've got some control over how you can prevent data from being entered. Remember, this is just for the current worksheet. And when we're done, or when the other user is done, he or she might be saving the file, that's fine. It's back in your hands. Unprotect the sheet, you know the password, and so on. One of many different scenarios you might imagine using these schemes, found initially by way of protect sheet here, but before that, remember, the whole issue of how to lock cells and unlock cells is important. We're looking at the workbook 11-Security and Sharing. Makes no difference which sheet we're working at, but let's imagine we've made some changes to this workbook and we want to save it. And we're also thinking along the lines of some protection. We only want certain people in our organization to be able to open this file from now on. They can make changes to it, that's not the issue. We simply want to restrict who can open this file. It's stored in a folder where people have access to other files, and some of those might be protected in a similar way. So, we want to put a password protection on this file. When we go to the command File Save As, and by the way, the keystroke shortcut for that is the F12 key. Go to this PC in this example here. Now, depending upon which version of Windows you're using, your screen is likely to look something like this. And near the Save and Cancel buttons in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see an option, Tools. Drop arrow, General Options. Now, there are essentially three major scenarios here. We could put a password to open and not to modify, meaning only certain people can open this, whoever can open it can modify it. A second scenario would be something along the lines of, well, anybody in our group can open this, anybody who has access to that folder can open this, but only some can modify it. And the third option might be passwords for both of these. Only some people can open this, and of those who can open this file, only some of them can modify this. So, as you're thinking this out, you might be sketching it out on a whiteboard or a sheet of paper or something, but you can imagine different approaches to how you might want to protect this information. So I'm going to provide a password to open here. And possibly I can also check this box, read only recommended. Maybe a lot of the people who open this really don't have a need to modify it, but it certainly wouldn't hurt, or they might have the occasional use to do that. If we choose read only recommended, there will be a prompt reminding users that they could choose that option. For the moment, I'll leave it off. So click OK. Remember, a password to open, but none to modify. We have to re-enter the password again. Click OK. We'll save the file, replacing previous version of it. And let's say we close the file. You can do that pretty quickly with Control W. Okay, the file is closed. At a later time, someone else is opening this. We can go to File Open or Control O. If it's in our recent files list, it is right here. I'll just click it this way. We're opening the file, and there's a prompt. We need the password. If I don't know the password, can't do much here. I do know it. Okay, the file is open. I can make changes to it. Maybe I'll close it with some changes, fine. Now, second scenario might be something like this. We go to File, Save As again. Remember, F12 is a shortcut. This time again, we're going to click the Tools option, then General Options. And instead of a password to open, let's take that off. We're saying now, anybody who can get to this folder can open the file, but only certain people can modify it. So we'll put in our password here, and enter. Put it in again, and enter. Save the file. Overwrite. Close it at some point. Control W, fast way. At a later time, we're going to open it, or someone else is. Control O. There's the file. We open it. And password for write access, or possibly open read only. Now, if I don't know the password, but remember, we said anybody can open it now, I can simply click read only. If I do know the password, and I do intend on making some changes, probably, I'll put in the password. So I can make changes here and there. I could save it, not a problem. Third scenario would be, and again, we're going back to File, Save As, F12 key, click that Tools option, General Options, a password for both, meaning only certain people can open this, and of those who can open it, only certain ones can modify it. And presumably these are different passwords, although they don't necessarily have to be. They could be the same one. And again, you just have to explore this a little bit. And you might try this sitting down in a room, either with another person or possibly with two computers, jumping back and forth a little bit, testing this out to see how it might play out. Think of some of the different options we have here. I'll click OK and put in the password again and save, overwriting the prior version. We'll close this. Remember, Control W, relatively fast. At a later time, we're going to open this, or someone else is. Open this file. Here's the password to open it. If we want to make changes, we'll put in the password. Now, we also have this option here of choosing read only. This is someone who does have write access, but doesn't need it at the moment. That person might choose to read only, and then can open a file and not make changes. But if you do want to make changes, PW, or whatever that password is, put it in. So think that out a little bit. Remember, when we're saving a file, or anytime you want to make changes to this concept, File, Save As, or F12, and as you're saving this, in this Save As dialog box, the Tools options, General Options, and we see our choices there. And experiment again with some of these other choices as well. There's so many different combinations we can't explore them all. But I think you get the general idea. It's just one more level of protection that you might consider as you work with Excel. We're looking at a workbook called 11-Security and Sharing, and the worksheet Protecting Workbook. And there is a feature referred to as Protecting a Workbook. On the Review tab, you might have seen in an earlier movie about protecting a worksheet. And that's often about content. Protect Workbook is more about structure. Keep others from making structural changes to your workbook, such as moving, deleting, or adding sheets. I've got information in this workbook. I'm about to use the tax table that is on a different sheet. I don't want others to go to that sheet and make changes there. I might hide this. That's a structural change that I can make right now. I'm going to right-click on the tax table sheet and hide it. We don't see it here anymore. I might have other hidden sheets as well where I have confidential or semi-confidential information. I don't want others to see this, and yet others can open this file and use it. By protecting the workbook, and we will give it a password, of course. We're protecting it for structure. So we put in the password, enter, and put in the password again, enter. In this state, another person might be using it, but if I were to right-click on any sheet tab, as I'm doing right now, I can't insert, delete, rename, move, or copy. Can't get the tab color. And because hide and unhide are grayed out, it's not even apparent whether a worksheet is hidden or not. I can't even find out. So I'm inhibited by trying to do that. If I didn't see that feature and I tried to move a sheet just by dragging it, I'll try and move this sheet to the right, that icon appears. Or if I were trying to copy this with the control key, click and drag it left or right, that is inhibited as well. Now, if I were somewhat adventurous or just curious, and maybe I'm on the Home tab, and probably that's the way it might have looked as I opened it. If I go to the Review tab, I see Protect Workbook, but if I click it, I do have the option of putting in the password. If I don't know the password, of course, I'm out of luck. I can't do much with this. But if I do, and perhaps it's back in my hands again, I can certainly turn off the password and then either reveal that hidden worksheet or move this right or left. I'm not being prevented from doing that anymore. And by the way, on a hidden sheet, when you right-click and unhide, for the moment I really have only one sheet. But even if I had multiple ones, you can only unhide one sheet at a time. So, Protect Workbook, quite a bit different than the Protect Sheet option, but nevertheless I think you can see how you can control certain workbooks. You just don't want any changes to the sheet layout. You might have hidden sheets you don't want others to see. You've got control over most features related to the sheets at the bottom of the screen. Protect Workbook. We're looking at a worksheet called Vendor Sales. It's in the workbook 11-workbook before sharing. Imagine different people access this file at different times. They open it, they add some information to it. And over time what's happened is there's so many different people who make changes to this that at different times someone tries to open this and sees the indication that it's read-only because somebody else has it open. What we'd like to be able to do is to allow different users to open this at the same time and be able to make changes to it. And I think you can see some potential problems there already. But still, the idea of allowing different people to have the same file open at the same time and be making changes to it is going to make sense in certain scenarios like the one I just described. This feature is called sharing, and on the Review tab you'll see an option called Share Workbook. And as we slide over that, we see the description, share your workbook so that others can work on it at the same time. And an FYI there, workbooks containing tables can't be shared. There's some other features that can't also, so you might want to explore on the help system other features of sharing that will not work. Let's choose this option, Share Workbook. Two tabs here, Editing and Advanced. And notice the box below it, Allow changes by more than one user at the same time. Let's check this box. Right now, this is telling me that I have this open. Of course, I know that. Eventually, we might see 3 or 4 names here at the same time, depending upon how many different people might have this open at a given time. Let's click OK. The status of this workbook is about to be changed. And the dialog box reads, this action will now save the workbook. Do you want to continue? Click OK. And now we see at the top of the screen the file name followed by the word shared in brackets there. Now, shared doesn't necessarily mean that others can get to this. What if this is stored on your flash drive? Well, you're the only one using that, and maybe you're not letting anybody else use it. For the moment, this is not active yet. We're setting this up more long term. Let's go back to Share Workbook. There's another tab here, Advanced. Ultimately, what we might be doing here, in addition to allowing multiple access, we probably will want to track the changes that have occurred. And we probably should keep the change history. The other option, don't keep the change history. Well, why not? Let's do. 30 days might be appropriate. You might want to experiment with this, maybe longer. And we can have the changes automatically update when the file is saved, or maybe have it happen every 15 minutes. Again, depending upon the volume of entry, the volume of changes, consider these options as well. And farther down the road, conflicting changes between users, ask me which changes when, the changes being saved when. This has to do with the tracking capability. That's a separate feature. It's covered in the next movie, but we should be thinking about this idea here. What's going to happen if one person makes a change, makes an addition here, someone else either mistakenly or on purpose makes a change to the change that you just made? So something to be thinking about there. Consider some of the other options. Click OK. Now, before proceeding with this, you want to be very cautious. In fact, an ideal situation could be you and a co-worker sitting down in the same room, maybe side by side, on two different computers. Experiment with this a little bit. Make changes. Both of you make changes at the same time. See how this plays out. Give it some thought. There's obviously a security concern in all this, and there are also some concerns about tracking changes, which we'll cover in the next movie. So the feature called sharing sets up the idea that different people can be using this workbook at the same time and making changes. We're looking at a worksheet called Recorded Changes. It's in the workbook called 11-Tracking Changes. If you want to allow different people to make changes to this worksheet at the same time, you probably have already set this up as a shared workbook. Now this workbook is not shared. We don't see that in the title bar up top. So we could start the process by going to Share Workbook. However, maybe you have never heard about shared workbooks yet, but you do see an option here on the Review tab called Track Changes. Keep track of changes made to this document. This is especially useful if the document is almost done and you're working with others to make revisions or give feedback. Now, this feature is ideal when you've got multiple users, but let's not also forget you could be using it for yourself only. Maybe you want to track the changes that you make to this file and nobody else has access to it at all. When you activate Track Changes and choose Highlight Changes, this dialog box pops up. And as you're about to check the box, you read Track Changes while editing. This also shares your workbook. Now, if you're going to be the only user, that might strike you as a little bit odd. In other words, again, you're thinking, I'm going to be the only user, nevertheless, I want to track my changes. Well, even if you do share the workbook, if nobody else can get to it, think of sharing as not meaning very much here. So it's a little bit odd as we approach this. If we want to track changes, we have to use a shared workbook, and this sets it up automatically. Eventually, you'll come back and consider some of these other choices. If it is multi-user, you can control which changes you want to track. Everybody but me or everyone, choose some options here. Highlight changes on screen. Let's do that. Click OK. This action will now save the workbook. Do you want to continue? Click OK, and you look at the top of the screen. The file name is followed by the word shared. Now again, even though that says shared, it doesn't necessarily mean others could be seeing it. On the other hand, maybe you do want to track changes and you do have a scenario where different people are able to have this open at the same time. So let's make a change over here. Diane Andrews' job rating really should have been a 4. Enter. And as I click elsewhere so you can see it better, note the indicator there, triangle in the upper left corner, right there. Pop up, we see what's happened, an indicator as to when a change was made. Here's another change over here. Diane Andrews also, her date of hire was in 2002. We'll change that. And also Heidi Barker here, that salary should have been $39,000. There we go. So we made some changes. Let's go back to track changes. Highlight changes. How about accept, reject changes? If it is multi-user, we could go down this path. But we've got to save the workbook first. Do we want to continue? Okay. Select changes to accept or reject. If different people have been working with this, we might want to consider these different choices here. All the ones not yet reviewed, since a certain date. You can imagine different variations here. As in the previous movie, when I was suggesting how to use sharing, here too, the idea should be, test this out a bit. 2 people in the same room on different computers, or you on 2 different computers. Go back and forth a little bit, make changes. If it is a situation that you're trying to set this up for people sharing this, you want to explore some options here, make some changes, see how this plays out. Now, one by one, I can start making changes here. We could have had many of them here. We can accept all the changes or reject them all, or accept them or reject them one by one as we wish. For the moment, I won't go there. Remember, track changes. Come back. Highlight changes. We're back here again. Now we have the option to list changes on a new sheet. Click here. Remember also with the concept of tracking changes, it could be that you are the only user and always will be, but you might want to track your changes even though it says shared. So here we see a list of the changes, and you can imagine how important this might be over time too, to track the different changes that were made here. I made 3 changes, you saw me make them, and here they are referred to here. We're on a new sheet called History. So it's definitely a feature worth considering. You want to explore it perhaps from 2 different angles. It truly is shared so that other people can use this and make simultaneous changes, and you want to track those changes, of course. Or maybe it's just you using this workbook by itself. You want to keep track of your changes. As we open and close this, we can make these disappear. We've got control over that too. Again, process could have started with track changes. It could have started with sharing a workbook. We've got some options here worth exploring. It's a valuable feature, not only for tracking changes when multiple users are using this file, but when it's only you using the file.